Happy Tuesday, because Steve Franklin's in the house.
Yeah.
Happy Tuesday. How you guys doing?
All right. We got the Christmas tree up. I like that. I like that as the background. Chris Franklin.
You got to try to be festive sometimes. It's a joyous time, I think, when you look around Philadelphia. They actually have a 13-1 record. And, yeah, some cold a little bit with the Hurts injury, but everything goes.
Speaking of, I thought you might be outside after we survived Chicago. This is easy. This is easy. I took the dog out this morning. I didn't even put my hat on. I'm like, this is nothing.
It's a heat wave compared to that place. The Chicago cold. I'm like, it can't be that bad. It's just 17. Oh my gosh, golf cold. Like, all right, no more. Yeah,
all right, since you two Rough Riders out there taking the cold in Chicago, that'll be my first question. Is this an issue with Jalen Hurts going forward? Forget the bad shoulder. Let's put that aside for a second. He admitted after the game his hand was numb. He couldn't feel the football. I know he's from down south and he played at Alabama. He was here as the quarterback of the Eagles last year, right? There were a couple of cold games last year. Is this a concern to Jalen Hurts when the games count the most, late December, January, and or February? Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that you have to worry about the weather with.
I don't think so. I think it's like what he's done with his passing. I think he's going to find a way to adapt. And I don't think he's going to be standing in a freezer trying to find the right combination of things to make him feeling better. But I think he's going to have he's going to find a way to rectify things, because as far as the game went on, he started to get a lot better. So I don't know if they changed the fight. I don't know if he put some more of that balm they put on their skin or anything else like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that helped out. But I think you'll see a correction and maybe an extra heater just for him to fix some of that stuff.
By the way, for the people panicking, he actually played better after he sprained his shoulder than before, which is kind of amazing. I do since we're talking about Jalen, Chris, I haven't brought this up on the show, but I wrote about it and I believe it. There's a lot of people who look at that game and said, well, Jalen's going to lose the MVP, and he probably will. He certainly will now. Patrick Mahomes is going to get it because he's likely going to miss some time. But I was the opposite. I'm like, put this is a check mark in his column. He played poorly, arguably his worst game of the season from a passer rating standpoint it was. And then you look up, and he did something again that nobody else has ever done in the history of the National Football League. And oh, by the way, he won the football game. If Dallas loses, Kansas City's taking Houston into overtime. Everybody has these lulls. You look up at the end of the game, 300 yards passing, 60 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. Nobody in the history of the league has reached those numbers. Now, you can manipulate these statistics, and I'm not a stats guy, but still, they've been playing this game for a long time. When nobody does that, and you're saying, oh, this is a terrible game from Jalen Hurts, I don't get it.
It's crazy because it's become a Sunday night ritual now when we all get the email about saying, okay, from the 7 stats from Sunday, it's basically become Jalen Hurts every single week. There's something new that he's doing. And I think with the MVP, I really think it was one of those things where he probably could have played if it was like a playoff game or a game where the Eagles needed to be like, hey, you need to win to continue to have a shot doing. He probably would have gutted it out and still be playing right now. I mean,
I agree. If they needed this game, he would play.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the fact that, especially when they're saying like, okay, it could be a couple weeks, that sounds like a grade 1 sprain to me. And when you see that, and usually the way he was still throwing the ball, it probably was more sore the following day. So that's why he's like, all right, you know what, let's take it easy. But I just look at the way he's doing it right now, and if he probably had one more game playing. If he was playing, I think if he played against the Cowboys and he won, I think he would have sewed it up. That's I think personally. But the fact that he's going to miss it now, I think that basically Mahomes is going to sit there and Andy Reid's prediction that he made last week is going to be correct now.
The MVP conversation is one thing. I want to have a different conversation about Jalen Hurts going forward. If Gardner goes in and plays well and they win the game, that helps to add pressure to Jalen Hurts. If Gardner goes in and loses the game, it may help Jalen's MVP status. But it also is going to ratchet up the pressure for the playoffs because people are now talking about, well, you can't play the football game like this. You're going to get hurt. We can't make him the quarterback of the future going forward. How much did the pressure get ratcheted up on Jalen Hurts because he took a bump in the shoulder and is going to cautiously sit out the game this week?
I don't think it put any pressure on him when it came to that aspect. I think all the pressure's on Gardner because he's a free agent after this year, and this is his chance in front of a national audience to show that, hey, you know what? I deserve to be in the conversation to be a starter for another team because we all know that he wants to be a starter. He's voiced that last year. He voiced it. He's looking forward to it again before the season. He's mentioned that he wanted to be a starter as well too. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure more on Gardner than I think what Hurts when everything is said and done. And listen, I've seen the way that he's done. I think he can handle it. I think Gardner can do that, especially with the mindset that he comes in with. So I think he can have some success when it comes to that.
What would you like to wager with me, Chris Franklin, that Gardner Minshew is not a starting quarterback opening day in the NFL next year?
That's a lot of teams. Oof.
32 teams.
32.
You got 32. Here's the number I
think he's a top 32 quarterback.
I don't
know. I think he's gonna be in a competition with somebody in training camp. I really do.
Well, here's the issue. Like, I agree with you, Jody. He's not going to be a starting quarterback, but I also think he's a top 32 quarterback, but it's not a strict meritocracy. Like, everyone looks at Gardner's upside and says, we need a better upside than that. We don't want to designate him as the starter, but he should be a starter. He should be a starting quarterback. But everybody's going to, whether they're going to draft a kid or they're going to try to develop somebody with upside. That stinks to high heaven, but at least they can sell to their fan base. Well, he's got upside. Gardner Minshew's Gardner Minshew. So I think Jody's right, but I think Gardner Minshew's a starter. I think he's one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the world.
And then when you look at the Houston Texans and their history of taking quarterback as well too, who knows? Gardner might be the one. The next thing he's the same thing. So I think he is in my top 32. I probably think he's I'm not going to make a Chris Sims list.
Bottom 5, but he's in my top 32. But he would be bottom 5. But I hear what Jody's saying. Nobody's going to sell that to their fan base.
No,
Gardner
no
Minshew.
Chance that he's their starting quarterback at the start of the season. Could he start games? Well, he's starting a game this week, and he's going to start games in the future for another team, but it's not going to be the starting quarterback. He'll come in when a guy gets hurt. Mark my words.
All right, let's talk about Jalen Hurts and the injury because that's the whole thing. So I want to get where you are with this, Chris. Jody knows where I am. I know where Jody is. You have this narrative that the Eagles have to protect Jalen Hurts. I don't know if it's the timing because they're 13-1, but they're running him too much. They're putting him in peril too much. Where are you in that debate?
I don't mind them running him. I don't think that the way I wasn't a fan of the way that they deployed their running game against the Bears. I thought the fact that you had to wait till 6:41 left in the second quarter to get Miles Sanders his first carry, I thought that was pretty troublesome as well too. Like, for me, the limit is about 10 to 12 runs a game for Hurts, and that's even then I feel like that's kind of high. I don't mind when it comes to the zone reads and he has to pull the ball. Okay, I get that. That's available too. And if you're down by the goal line and quarterback sneaks, I know they count into that. I have no problem with
the victory formation. They count
that
as
too.
well.
That too, yeah. But I think as he starts to go along and he starts to get a little bit older, you want to see this guy for as long as you can because, listen, he's in line for an extension, and I'm pretty sure that the Eagles want to have him around so that they're not paying him all his time, paying him his whole entire time, while he's just sitting on there on the IR. So I think as the years go, I don't think we'll see as much running as we do, say, a year, 2 years down the line for that. But for the rest of this season, the Eagles cannot have him running as much as they did on design runs because they do. They're just setting themselves up to potentially seeing Gardner Minshew coming in more and more if they do that.
Right. John used the word change in the first hour. You're right. The Eagles aren't going to change their offense. They can tinker with it. They can make adjustments. They can scale it back slightly. Not talking about installing a whole new offense to protect Jalen, but the play calling can be directed in a way that puts him less in harm's way. And that you and I see it the same. Mr. Franklin.
And
When you get a happy win,
real quick, Jody, because I just want to get a follow up on the injury, because I thought Matt Eberflus came into this game with a plan to be physical with Jalen Hurts. And I heard Kevin O'Connell talking yesterday about how teams are taking shots at Justin Jefferson now. Is that a concern? Because while football isn't what it was in the 90s, are teams going to say, just take shots at Jalen Hurts, especially now with the shoulder injury? Are we going to see that?
Honestly, I'm shocked it hasn't happened more across the league with all the different quarterbacks, because I used to have a coach that used to say, hey, take a 15-yard penalty as long as you knock the quarterback down, send a message. Okay, do that. Because once you get that first hit on the quarterback, that first truly impactful thing, they're thinking the whole entire rest of the game. I mean, taking shots beforehand, starting looking like get up, like, I don't know if I want to do that ever again. And it's like, well, question, why am I on this field? So I look at that stuff. That's the thing. I know the blitzes aren't getting. That's why I think the Eagles made a point to really work on their blitz pickups in the offense when it comes to blitzes, because they know teams are going to get free shots on them. You don't want to keep them upright. You don't want to keep them accumulating these hits. So I think we're going to see it for the rest of the season. It's a matter of how creative some of these defensive coordinators are going to be to make sure they get a free runner to go ahead and put those shots on. And look at the rest of the season. Saints, I think, could be a problem with that. Giants, not so much, but in the playoffs, I think if they face the 49ers, say like a D'Amico Ryans, I think he could find ways. I think, to get Hurts on the ground a few times. So that's what has me concerned if it's a matchup against them.
If he were playing this week, Micah Parsons would have found a way to get the Jalen Hurts.
Oh, yeah.
And make him pay a physical price. But that now is out the window because Gardner Minshew is going to be their starter. All right, let's go to the other side of the ball. I know you guys don't get a happy Tuesday, but you get a happy Wednesday instead. I brought this up with Les earlier. 6 more sacks, 6 more yesterday. Yet there are still members of Eagle Nation fan base that say, yeah, this guy's not aggressive enough. When you lead the league in sacks and he's widening the difference between them and the Cowboys, who's still number 2 each and every single week, how does Jonathan Gannon just not laugh out loud when he talks to you guys on Wednesday?
I think he has his own little chuckles in private when it comes to there. And another thing was, I saw one time we came to total blitzes, the Eagles were in the middle of the pack, and you saw it sometimes even when it came to the Bears, they were bringing some pressure that way too. So
and that when they brought pressure, that was the David Montgomery touchdown. By the way, people are blitz. They called a blitz touchdown.
Why'd you do it? I think Gannon's done a really good job. I mean, I think when you hear the way that Hassan Reddick talked after the game, when he's asking the players, like, hey, what do you like? And he sees that, and he's getting a feel for it, because those guys are actually experiencing it. They're seeing it from the field level. And then that's when you have guys in the booth up at top there looking at it too. Marrying those two together, he's trusting the veteran guys that are on that staff that and putting them in positions what they feel comfortable with. And you're seeing the dividends from that. So I have no problem with that as well too. And you can't blitz all the time, because if you want to be blitz happy, look at the Giants and look at what their defense is doing right now. I know they don't have the same personnel like the Eagles do, but at the same time, you look at this thing. There's a reason why they have live by the blitz, die by the blitz. So you can't consistently do that,
and
especially
they've
in this
been
game.
so successful. I mean, what else do you want? They're getting home with 4. It's exactly what the goal of every team. Get home with 4. You're able to have 7 in coverage. I don't understand why people are still complaining about this defense, other than they don't realize what year it is. So they're comparing it to Buddy Ryan or Jim Johnson or Bud Carson. Compared to the other teams in 2022, I mean, 55 sacks, which, by the way, the franchise record is 62, I believe. They're going to break that most likely. They've never had more players with 6 or more. So all the Reggie Clyde teams, whatever team you want to go, they've never had as many different players with 6 or more. Sweat's gonna at 9.5. Slay was joking around about that. not quite 10 yet. Javon Hargrave, boy, that's a difficult decision with him. He's having such a big year on a contract year. Hassan Reddick has been. Jody should take a bow, because he's been advocating for Hassan Reddick since basically when he was in Arizona. He's been phenomenal for this team. But JG deserves a lot of credit.
Yes.
And this is what I brought up earlier in the show. Boy, he surprised me with the safety work. He toggled between Devonta Maddox and Kayvon Wallace. Everybody was like, is he going to start Kayvon or is he going to elevate Anthony Harris? He said, you know what? We don't need a nickel corner because Justin Fields can't process, has terrible receivers. We're not worried about the passing game for the most part. We're not going to need a nickel that much. When we don't need a nickel, play Avonte at safety. When we do need a nickel, play Kayvon at safety. Man, I was like, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, and I have to give credit where credit is due. Kayvon Wallace did play a good game on Sunday.
They both played. Avonte was in on the 2 forced fumbles. Kayvon led the team in sacks. So Kayvon did what he does well. Avonte does what he does well in coverage. I thought it was brilliant.
It was really good, and I think that one thing that we saw, and I'll get back to JG in a sec, but I think the one thing that we saw is really underrated when it comes to Devonta Maddox is his ability to help in run support. And that was a full thing. Even before this game, he does a great job setting the edge. He gets a great job turning everybody back. But I think that goes back to how Gannon is looking. He's got a good feel for what his players can do now. And I look at that too, because I just knew like, oh, Anthony Harris is coming up. I thought it was a shoo-in that he's coming in that way too. The fact that he had confidence in his own guys, he stuck with his own plan, he stuck with his own game plan, and looked at it and saw that. I thought that was huge, and it worked out very well for him. So Gannon's playing his way out. He's playing his way out for Philadelphia, but for a good reason. And I think for Eagles fans for the time being right now, I think they should just enjoy what he's being able to do right now with this defense, this historic defense in terms of what the Eagles are doing.
All right, 2-part question for you, Chris Franklin. Number one, who throws more interceptions in Saturday's game between the Cowboys and the Eagles? Dak Prescott or Gardner Minshew?
Prescott, because I think overall, when you look at the way that Gardner plays his type of game, because I found this out yesterday. I was looking up the numbers. Gardner Minshew plays well especially when they use the play action pass. Especially this screams run game for the Eagles. I thought last week would have done it too, but this screams run game for the Eagles, and the way he throws the play action, he's only thrown 1 interception in his career. I think like 7 touchdowns, 1 interception when they use off the plate there and do that. And then also look at the intermediate short game.
RPO in your definition, is RPO considered play action?
To me, it is. I think that is as well too, because you got to give that look to go ahead like you're and give it to Sanders as well too. So I look at that and I see the short intermediate range. And then the fact you have Kelvin Joseph, I throw it to Kelvin Joseph's way each time, and just with Devonta Smith, and just go, okay, you know what? He's probably not going to pick it off. The worst case scenario is going to be incomplete. So why not do it that way too? So I think Dak throws. I think 1. I don't think Minshew throws. I think Dak has just 1 more interception than Minshew. All right.
Does. So if Dak has more interceptions, and it sounds like you think the Eagles can win the game. If they win the game, who's the starting quarterback against the New Orleans Saints the week after?
I think it's going to be. I think it's Hurts, but I think it's like maybe like a quarter or a half, because then that way you still get him back in the field, things get him in a rhythm. And I think that last game against the Giants, I think you maybe have him for a drive. I don't think you even dress him for that last game. I think you just give him. It's supposed to be the next 2 are going to be treated like, if they win this game, you treat these next 2 like preseason games all over again. That way,
right, so you're actually changing, because I gave you credit in a couple of different places last week. You had the idea of if they beat the Cowboys, everybody sits against the Saints because it's a bye week. But then the last week, you got to balance it. You got to give them a little play. You don't want them too rusty going into the playoffs. That you would look at the Saints game as basically a bye, which I hadn't even thought about. And I said, that Franklin kid's pretty smart. But here's where you're wrong. If the Eagles win this week, the starting quarterback against the Saints is the former Saint, Ian Book. they will put Gardner Minshew in protective wrap as well, because if Jalen's got an issue and Gardner is needed come playoff time, you can't put either of those guys at risk.
But here's where I'm thinking as well too. Here's a little like a caveat of this as well too. If you let the Saints win, that pick gets worse. So do you get?
They're not worried about that. They're putting that in the rearview mirror. It's all about making
Howie's gonna finally put the stake through. Howie might want to lose that game actually because he can't take advantage of Mickey Loomis if he's not in the league.
Remember how the Phillies used to have the Astros used to be the unofficial farm team for that?
Yeah,
it seems to become the unofficial farm team for the Eagles.
So you got to keep Mickey in the league. So maybe you give up a couple spots and draft.
Here's the problem for both of you guys. What happens if the Saints win this week? And they're actually in the mix for a playoff spot.
Yeah, this is my concern.
Pick in the draft. It could be 19th because the Saints could make the playoffs and win that stinking division.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the draft because this team, the championship window is open. Exactly. So here's the concern, Chris. Here's the concern. You lose in Dallas. Jalen's not healthy enough to go on January 1st. You lose to the Saints because they're playing hard, as Jody points out. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there week 18 against a New York Giants team that has to win to make the playoffs. Jalen Hurts has got to be back for that game. Now, Dallas also has to win.
Right.
So, but baked into that is they beat the Eagles already. So they would only have to beat, I believe, Tennessee. And then it would come down to you need the football game in week 18. Little far-fetched at this point, but it's not a crazy scenario.
It's not, but I think personally, I hope it doesn't come to that because I know that game is probably going to be flexed tonight, and the last thing we're
that's a good point. That's a good point. We're always goddamn, we're selfish. Poor Jenna, poor Jenna Lane is getting trashed, and she's a very nice woman. She came across poorly in that Gio Bernard thing, but she's getting trashed. I don't know if you saw that. But she's getting trashed because we think that way, Chris. We're like, we don't want a night game.
Yeah,
we don't want a night game.
Yeah, that's our job is to make your guys' lives easier.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
No, it's not. Sorry about that, McMullen. Here's a how do you handle your business question for both you guys. What do the Vikings do this week? Because they're still eligible to get the number 1 overall pick. If they have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, they win 3 in a row. Eagles lose 3 in a row. They get the home field advantage. How realistic is that? We can debate. They play before the Eagles on Saturday, so they can't wait to see if the Eagles lose. They have to go out at 1 o'clock and play the Giants at home. Vikings all out this week? Or do they go, yeah, if we get Justin Jefferson hurt, and other teams and the Giants are going to watch that film and see that our opposition took shots at Jefferson last week, do they scale back? Knowing they've already locked up the division, they're going to be a divisional winner, but there's a real long shot, small percentage chance, real long shot they could get best overall record at home. How do they handle their game Saturday against the Giants?
I think they put everybody in. I really do. I think they still treat it like a regular game.
As long as there's a chance, they're gonna. Kirk Cousins takes 70 hits a game, and that guy's been tremendously durable. Now you never know when it's coming. Jefferson, he wants to break the record. So I mean, he's a typical receiver. He wants to break Calvin Johnson's record. So he's not coming off the field. They might have to force him off the field. When there's nothing to play for, but as long as there's stuff to play for, they're going to. Do
you think the Eagles are forcing Jalen Hurts off the field this week?
No, I think he's hurt, and I don't think he should play in the game.
So how did he play the second half last week? How did he play the fourth quarter?
He probably, like a lot of NFL players say, probably said, "I'm okay, and they checked the MRI.
When did he become not okay?
Well, they gave him an MRI on Monday morning. And, look, and I talked about this. I remember concussion-wise with Malcolm Jenkins, and he had, I think it was New Orleans. He had a concussion, and he hit it from the team. And he said, I probably shouldn't have done that. Players want to play generally. And they're not going to say, Carson Wentz got a lot of crap over that for the Seattle playoff game when he reported his concussion symptoms. Things have changed a little bit, but still, you got that old school mentality with most guys. They're going to keep things. And Jalen, my guess is, wanted to finish the game and felt okay to finish the game. And then afterwards, they found he had a sprained shoulder.
And then there's a doctor, I forget his name, but I saw it online as well too. So typically with the type, if it's an AC joint sprain or a sprain that they believe that Hurts has, normally you can just get a shot to numb it up and you can go out and play again. But
yeah, people have played. And that's why I think if they needed this game, I do think he'd be playing this week. I think he would, but they don't need the game.
Rest him up and get him a fully healthy Jalen Hurts. Rest him up so that way he's not thinking about that in the back of his mind. That thinking like, oh, okay, I gotta watch, or you start twisting a little bit using your other shoulder, and then it puts you in weird, awkward positions and put you in even more chance to get hurt something else too. So just let him rest it, and then see how the rest of the week, see how the game plays out. Just take it game by game. I think that's the best approach to do it. Don't rush him back.
Agreed. All right. So if Gardner Minshew leads the Eagles to a victory, will he, day after Christmas, come into Nick Sirianni's office and say, hey, what do I have to do to be the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles? Will we get a redux from last year after the win against the Jets?
I think he will, but I think I think he'll do it in jest. It's like, hey, you see, I see right now. Hey, Nick, you see what I did out there? Hey, I led us to a division title. Hey, what's going on? And I can see Nick is like, he's like, I get you, I get it, and then we'll hear. I love the competitive spirit that he has, but I think we all know Jalen's our guy. I can see that sequence happening one by one by one.
100%. And I know it's a joke, and we're talking about it, but Gardner's blissfully unaware. He's very competitive, and he thinks he should be a starter, and that's a good thing, by the way. He should think that way. He had one of the great quotes ever. I put him up there with. I always tell Jody my two favorite quotes. The one's obvious, John McKay back in the day. You're talking about his team's execution. He said, "I'm all for it because they're so bad." And then Brian Kelly tried to do that. By the way, it didn't go over well in the modern era. And then Tom Moore asked why you don't practice rep with the backup quarterbacks, and he said, "If 18 gets hurt, we're bucked and we don't practice buck." That's my favorite. That's my favorite of all quotes. But Gardner had a great quote. And when Trevor Lawrence got drafted and he stopped taking dumps because he doesn't believe in number twos.
Wow.
Yeah, that is a good one.
I've never heard that. That's
never
bravo.
heard that before? Oh,
I never heard that one. No.
All around last year. Gardner
my
God.
Yeah. And, he wasn't beating out Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick, but he thought he was.
One of my favorite quotes that Johnny Mac relates to all the time is Adrian Peterson.
Oh, that was a great one, too. Yeah, that was a great one, too.
He's an FU player. He's an FU talent. Sorry for the guy who was carrying the ball.
Chester Taylor was a darn good back, Chris. So I'll say it real quick. He's coming off a 1,200-yard season. I think he had 50 catches or something, so he was pretty good all-around back. And the Vikings drafted Adrian Peterson, so I asked one of the personnel guys, you got a good running back. You need a lot of help other places. And he said, I love Chester Taylor, but fuck Chester Taylor. This guy's different. And he was right.
He is spot on.
Adrian Peterson was that type of player. All right, Franklin. I know everybody will be reading you on NJ.com leading up to the game, after the game, and everything else. So you'll make your official pick then. But you have to at least give us your lean here today. Are the Eagles coming home from Dallas on Christmas Eve 14-1?
I'm leaning yes. Just by looking at the way this Dallas defense is playing right now, there's even with Gardner Minshew in there, the Eagles have the receiver talent. If you do get Dallas Goedert back, the way I think that adds more, and he and Minshew had that connection in that game against the Jets, so I think that's big as well too. And then I look at this way that this defense is playing, and look at the way Dak is playing, and you see the way it's going around. I think this is trending to me. Is trending to a way that the Eagles come home, and I got the odds on favor. Like I'm trying to figure out who's going to be the one to have the Jeff Garcia moment after the game. Is it going to be Minshew going Merry Christmas Philadelphia? I'm trying to see who's going to do that one if they win this game.
I think they got a chance, but I got to debate this one. I'm going to be mulling this one all week before. I don't know who I'm picking in this game. I think the Eagles got a shot, though. I think Gardner Minshew is capable. And I don't know if that's good for the Eagles. If he plays really, really well, it is good. But there's going to be a narrative out there that says, see, Jalen Hurts is a system quarterback. And I think it's going to be a dumb one, but it's going to be there, unfortunately.
System his way into MVP conversations. Oh, okay. Yeah, you go with that, guys. Chris Franklin, always a pleasure. Thank you much for jumping in. We will get you on again.
Sorry for all the cursing, Chris. I got weird FU.
It's just another Wednesday. It's just another Tuesday, man.
Tuesday.
Happy effing Tuesday.
Profane Tuesday here on Birds 365.
You sent me down the good quote list, Jody.
McMullen will see you on Christmas Eve. I will not. So have a Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you next week. Buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. Happy holidays to you and everybody watching.
Thanks,
Franklin. In front of the tree here on Birds 365. All right, Mac and Mac coming back. You know what we got to do? Oh, we'll be doing it all week. It's Christmas week. Of course, we're going to put a bow on the show.